I'm delighted to welcome Ben and to have a discussion about his views, his ideas, his perspectives, and his recent book, The Potentialist, Your Future in the New Reality of the Next 30 Years. Ben, welcome. A pleasure to have you with us. Looking forward to our discussion just now.
Well, thank you, Boris. I'm excited to be here, and for all the people who are kind enough to tune in today, I appreciate you coming, and I hope you find this this next hour useful.
I'm certain of it, and wanted to start our discussion, Ben, with helping the audience learn a little bit about your background. And I know that your attunement to trends and understanding of technology predated your business leadership, which then transformed into entrepreneurship. Can you please share a little bit about the context of your journey thus far, Ben?
Yeah, by partially by interest and partially by just dumb luck, like most people who have a good life. I was able to get involved in technology very young, while I was still in high school in 1964, and so I came up through information technology, as a programmer, as a manager, and everybody was young back in those days in IT, and because it was such a new field, and I was able to move up in the leadership of information technology very young. So at 21, I was a manager over 65 people. At 25, I was a middle level executive, always in very large information technology companies, and went aerospace, finance, banking, and so by the time I was 30, in my early 30s, I was responsible for 200 systems and programming people at a company called Blue Cross Blue Shield of Indiana, and then was made CIO at 34, what today we'd call CIO, at 34 over all of IT. And then I had been going to law school at night while I was an executive, and a single father, by the way. So I was very busy.
Wow.
But I then was promoted to be chief operating officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield. 5 years later, I was named to succeed the CEO. And I had 2 years to develop a plan. I developed a plan to build 2 public companies in parallel over the next 10 years, and son of a gun if both of them didn't work. And one of them became a very large broker, publicly traded broker called Acordia. That's now part of USI, which is a very large broker. And then the other was Anthem, of course, which has done extremely well. And that's thanks. I had the good fortune to help build a company, but they've had great management people, particularly the leadership. I think right now is outstanding, and they're really doing really well. So I'm very proud of that background. But yeah, it started in IT, and in parallel, in my early 20s, I got interested through a class in college in human potential, my own to start with, and then how to bring it out in other people. And it became my leadership style. And it became the way I looked at companies and people, is what's possible here, and to try to bring that out. And so it's really shaped my life. And that's where the book title, The Potentialist, comes from. It's really looking at life and business opportunity and people through the lens of opportunity, through the lens of potential. And it's
that's to be a potentialist, Ben, then to look at opportunities. How do you think about that sort of concept?
Yeah, well, so it sounds so simple, but it is kind of the glass half full, glass half empty, thing. And so when by looking at things through the eyes of opportunity, through the lens of opportunity, and thinking, what could I do here? What's possible? Yes. What stands in the way, and how do I remove those barriers? That really, I mean, when I first presented the plan to build Anthem and Acordia, people were shocked. They said, how can we possibly do this? We're one little Blue Cross and Blue Shield company. And I said, well, let's figure out what's in the way and let's overcome it. And that's pretty much what you do. And you look at your own life that way. You know, where am I being my own worst enemy, and how can I remove those barriers? It's easy to find out. Just get to ask people.
Yes, ask people, and
they'll usually tell you, right?
As well.
Right. Yeah. And really look at yourself, and then say, well, I'm not going to accept that about myself. I'm going to do better, you know? And so that's a potentialist, and it all boils down to a pledge that I developed many years ago, which is I will do my best, my personal best. And only I know what that is. I can't lie to myself. So when I go to bed at night, I know, did I do my best? I'll do my best to be my best. That's my potential. Whatever it is, I'm going to discover it and try to live it, and leave the world and the people I meet along the way a little better than I found them. And the little better is really important, because you improve yourself and you improve things around you a step at a time. It's great to have the goal, but if you don't have the daily action, I'm going to do better today. Today's going to be a better day. Then you don't get there. So that's really it.
That's great. That's great. And it's keeping in mind the current reality, keeping in mind where you're going, the goals, keeping in mind the process, and having a positive attitude towards it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm people always refer to me as a visionary, and they always say, well, you know, you were ahead of the curve. You saw this coming. You built this in advance of that. But it really is. I'm not a person who lives in the clouds. If I can't implement it, it drives me crazy. I mean, I have to have a way. My mind immediately starts to working about how do I turn that into reality. And sometimes it won't always work. You know, as you know, you're around entrepreneurs, you're an entrepreneur, you have to be ready to fail at times and make mistakes. But that's not a failure. It's just a picking yourself up. It's a learning opportunity. So
100%. And how do you best optimize your next steps given this knowledge, but then keep going? And then in line with that, how are you thinking will the Potentialist, the book, and I know you have ideas for others, how is that meant to help people in the healthcare field and in others evolve and become better potentialists?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most troubled by, and one of the reasons I wrote the book, and I'm taking time out of a very good life, it was very good before I started this stuff, was that there is an exceptional level of negativity today, and it doesn't match reality. There was, you know, 2 polls recent in the last couple of years, one in Europe, one in the United States, and they were very close, and roughly around 65 to 70% of the people said they thought the future would be worse than today. And that's high from historical measures. That sense of opportunity has been lost. A lot of it's there's a lot of negativity in the media. The media feeds off that. It's a business model. It's a political business model. It's an advocacy group business model. Everything's a disaster. Everything's going to we're going off the cliff. Well, that doesn't match historically what's really happened. We've gone through difficult times throughout history, and we overcome them, and the human race rises. And so I'm really trying to get people to look at that realistically and say, how can you possibly feel so negative? I mean, at worst, it's a flip of the coin, right? But then if you look at the arc of history, you would say, well, it's a lot better than a flip of the coin. And we've lost sight of how good we live today compared to history. It's the best time in the world, and the future is going to be even great if we look at the future through a lens of pragmatic opportunity. I mean, pragmatic optimism, because we have the opportunity. And if you don't look at it that way, if you're pessimistic or if you're fearful, then what happens is you don't even see the opportunity. You'll make bad decisions because you can't even see it, because you're looking at through the eyes of pessimism. And so I'm really trying to make hopefully make a difference with as many people as I can reach, that it doesn't hold up to the facts. And there is enormous opportunity coming. the best human beings have ever had. But will it be a place where there'll be nothing to worry about? Of course not. That's life. So anyway,
that's the challenge, that's the opportunity, and actually that's, like you said, part of our evolution and progression as human beings.
Yeah.
And G is asking us a question. G is asking, what advice do you have for parents to help develop children with your kind of attitude and curiosity, Ben?
I will tell you, I think parents, and matter of fact, I have a whole nother initiative called Parenting a Potentialist. So if you go to my website, potentialistfuture.com, and it's really trying to give parents specific advice around what you do. And I've had the opportunity to have working with my own adult children to help develop those kind of attitudes in the children around me. The main thing is talk to them about it. It turns out that young people really depend. I just wrote an article in LinkedIn and in Facebook about this, a little brief blurb. That we did a survey or saw a survey recently where children and even up through young adults rely on parents and grandparents to interpret the news for them, to interpret events around them. And we forget that. We're so busy taking them to soccer games and doing this that we forget. Talk to them about what's going on in the world, because all they hear is negativity. I'm sorry, that's all they hear. And tell them, wait, you got to put it in perspective. Life's good. Life's really good. And the world is better off than it's ever been. We forget in the last 25 years, we've lifted 1 billion people out of subsistence living, 1 billion. And we're going to have the cloud's going to be worldwide for everybody. And that's 30% of the world's population, 2 billion people. I mean, not quite 30, but 2 billion people are going to have an opportunity to learn, to lift themselves. This is wonderful stuff. And we should be embracing it. I think, for me, I know my own experience with my parents. They were not successful in the eyes of the world. They didn't have a lot of money. I had to grow up working hard and stuff, doing a lot of different jobs. But they paid me in the most important currency, which was they used to say to me constantly, "You're a smart kid. You work hard. You're going to do anything you want to do in life. You can do." That's incredibly good. And it's not pablum. I mean, they would certainly correct me if they thought I was off track. But that belief in you and my aunts, my uncles, my extended family, same way. It was this, you can do it. You can do it. And it's so simple, but that repeated message and that feeling from parents, and at the same time explaining to them what the world is and why we see some of the difficulties, which I tried to do in this book. The first third of the book hopefully will help anyone on here that reads it, help you in really 90 pages, 88 pages, get a grasp of what's going on and why are so many things appearing to be not so good right now with government, with healthcare, and they're going through a transition. So it explains that. So bottom line, talk to your kids, talk to them, make it a conversation. Some parents have actually have written to me. One lady started it on Facebook. Now a lot of people are doing it. They're starting book clubs with their kids with this book. They're sitting down, they're going through this book and explaining why this is sound advice, and they're using it as an outline, of course, and then adding in their own stuff. So hopefully that's a good answer, because it's a great question, and it's the most important thing you can do.
100%, and it's encouraging, it's enabling, it's empowering, giving knowledge, giving support, and then giving motivation is what you're saying, to help people resist some of the negativity. And then also perhaps some of the resistance. For someone to learn and to progress, knowledge is part of the equation, of course, for sure. And what are some of the other obstacles where we've talked about the negativity as an obstacle? How do you see resistance to innovation as an obstacle? What should people be aware of to get ahead of the curve successfully?
Yeah, the part of what is going. One of the great things you can teach kids and remind yourself is in physics, right? Any forward movement creates resistance. Any forward movement creates resistance. Well, that's what happens in life too. So innovation comes, and there will always be problems following that innovation. And that interplay between advancing and resistance is sort of nature's quality control system. It's saying you don't quite have it right yet. So any of us who've been around technology know you introduce a new piece of technology, it'll have problems with it. But that doesn't mean we should avoid it. It just means we need to be thoughtful. So for example, when Google first came out and Facebook first came out, hey, it's free. Well, we've learned it's not free. What it was their data, them taking our data and selling it and using it, and made them incredibly big, powerful companies. They didn't lie to us. It was right there in in the agreement that we clicked on and never read. But that's the kind of thing going forward. We need to be a little more thoughtful. We need to be a lot more thoughtful about, okay, technology is wonderful. I want to look at it through the lens of opportunity and what I can do with it. But I also need to understand there will be a downside. And what is that downside? And how can I best make sure I move ahead rationally and judiciously?
That makes sense. And then thank you for sharing that, Ben. What do you think are some of the challenges, some of the issues, some of the forces of change that we will need to be mindful of and apply this mindset to in how we go through the world going forward in the next 30 years or so?
Well, and it's right now. It's real, very real. I was a student, not literally a student, but I knew him and had enormous respect for the futurist Alvin Toffler, who wrote Future Shock 50 years ago. And in that he introduced these concepts and some terms that people weren't used to, called democratization, and then its counterforce, which is deinstitutionalization. Well, those very lofty sounding things, right now everybody can see it going on. Suddenly government is divided. It's not very functional. It seems like it's out of step with us more than I can tell you, more than ever in my lifetime. Education system, same things. It's almost like there's a war between parents and the education system in many ways, and they're the customers, for goodness sake. They're parents. So, and in healthcare we have miracles, but it's a very difficult system to work with. Very difficult in any country. In any country, it's very difficult. You might have good primary care, but then you have difficulty getting into specialty care. So what that means, what's going on there is, as we introduce democratizing innovations, meaning something that makes something available to a few, available to many, and then to everyone, and there's more and more of those coming. All of our technologies making that possible. And you could take any number of very successful technology companies, and that's what they're doing. They're democratizing something, making it available to everyone. And that revolutionizes industries, music, movies. We've all seen it, right? Retail, and it's coming for everybody. It's just every company, every industry is going to be hit hard with this. What happens with the institutions is we used to be able to rely on these institutions. They were stable. And no matter what happened, they looked like they were, there. We weren't always happy with them, but they were stable. Well, now they're not stable. And that is part of democratization and what everybody's going to face the next 30 years. And something you need to explain to your children is this next 30 years, it's almost like nature saying, it's time to grow up, individuals. You can't count on your institutions to bail you out. You can't count on, because they're falling behind. They can't change as fast as you can and as technology can change life. And they're falling out. They're falling behind. They're out of step. And so We have to learn to be much more resilient and to teach our children and young people be much more resilient, much more self-reliant. Yeah, it's a crucial change for everyone. You cannot say, well, you know, if I don't take care of my health, I'm sure the government will do it. Don't. That is not a good decision. Well, if I don't plan for my retirement in the future, I don't have enough money to really live. I'm sure the government will make it up to me. They won't. They can't, because we're in a declining population, and you've got more people living longer. That's simply not going to work anymore. And so that change to say, no, it's up to me, and I've got to be prepared, and I've got to be resilient to the fact that we're going to be going through a very tumultuous time. We're going to come out the other end better. We always have, but this is going to be a time of that it can feel very unstable if you've relied on these institutions, especially if you've relied on them a great deal.
As the systems are being challenged, systems of different kinds, some of them potentially breaking down. And then coming from the healthcare meets societal perspective, you write about the decreasing birth rates, and you make an argument in specific case and data regarding that in various parts of the world, the ability to work from anywhere, which we're experiencing, and longevity that is coming, and hopefully more to come. How do you think that all nets out for the economy and our society in the situation of the systems being challenged?
Well, here, I think, first of all, just so that the people with us get if they're not familiar with this phenomenon of declining birth rates, a brief tutorial on that. This is not a new thing. Birth rates have been declining worldwide for 50 years. And 25 years ago, 2004, there was a phenomenal book. It's still available out on Amazon, called Fewer, by a guy who's passed away now named Ben Wattenberg. And he was a scholar, and he described what's happening right now, which is we're going to get a point where we're going to see more and more countries where the birth rate keeps falling to a point where you have to have 2.1 births for every female in a population of child, you know, to have the population stay flat. None of the developed countries in the world are at 2.1, and many of them are far below. And there's an interesting thing. There is a cliff, and it's about 1.3 births per female, where you can never recover. So you can't turn it around, because there's not enough women of childbearing age to have enough children. They'd suddenly have to start having a dozen children each. And so you think,
and it's not linear, right?
Right. No, it's not linear. There are these cliffs. So, for example, when I first started, I spent a lot of time in Italy. When I first started going to Italy, you know, many years ago, it was around 1.7, 1.8. It's now 1.3. They are over the cliff. Same thing, China, over the cliff now, and so that means they cannot.
Which a lot of people don't realize about China, right?
Right. They have one of the most severe problems. So they're at a point.
People know there's a problem, but they don't know how pronounced it is and how severe.
Right. And so if you just go out and look at it, so basically what, you know, Europe, United States is better because it has such high. You can offset it with immigration, and we still have very high levels of immigration. But so it sounds like a disaster movie. You know, I grew up on these horrible disaster movies about overpopulation. And of course, they were all wrong. And so, but now people want to, you know, some people want to write a disaster movie about underpopulation. Well, it is challenging, but I talked to a very renowned economist that I know recently, and he said it so well. I said, you know, how does an economy grow when the population is declining? And he said, oh, it's really not a problem. And I said, wow, really? He said, yeah. He said, so long as productivity grows faster than the rate of decline, your economy will continue to grow. Well, all the technologies coming should make us much more productive. AI will basically make us extraordinarily more productive. And we can take a lot of work that humans used to have to do, repetitious, physical, tedious, and we can let automation do that. And as we do, we get more productive. Second way this works,
we're able to spend more time on the other value-added aspects of our jobs.
Exactly. But and the second factor is, of course, that we're living longer. I mean, and that those jumps in longevity have been huge. And I mean, we doubled life expectancy in 120 years. People are expecting we'll double it again in 60, certainly half that time, maybe less. Well, as people live longer, they're going to need to work longer, not only because for economic reasons, but you'd be bored stiff. Nobody wants to be retired. Can you imagine being retired for 50 years? I mean, no. So what's going to happen is as more people live longer, they'll work longer. And so that also offsets the decline in population, if you follow me. So the trick is, and then the last place is, as we bring more people who have been living in subsistence living and bring them into where they're entrepreneurs, they're workers, skilled workers, they will also add to productivity. So we can overcome this, but it's going to create some interim, very big challenges. Suddenly, we all woke up right after COVID, there weren't enough pilots. Suddenly there's not enough specialty physicians. It takes you months to get in to see a specialist now. We're 1 million short, we're in just the United States, we're 1 million short of nurses. And so those are going to hit us. We're going to feel it, and until we automate enough so that we free up people to do more of those jobs. So that's another big factor. You know, we talked about the institutions not being, and if you talk about institutions being out of step, as I said, this has been known for 50 years. 25 years ago, this wonderful book came out, and he tried to speak to every leader in the world he could about it. But have you ever heard one time until recently a politician talk about the challenges of declining population? Not one. Did you ever have one major media outlet talk about it? Not once.
There's other short-term trends that get cited as reasons for different occurrences, but not a longer overarching trend.
No, and so that's a perfect example of how your institutions get out of step with reality. Change is occurring so fast, they're focusing on yesterday's problems, not the ones that are coming. And some of these have big consequences of not paying attention. So anyway, that's hopefully that was comprehensible for the people on here. But that's how and that's the kind of stuff you explain to your children if they're middle school or high school and they can understand it, because I've done it. I speak to young people all the time, and they get this stuff. And then sometimes a lot quicker than adults do. So,
well, I think it's less ingrained views, right? And being able to step out of the box and then look at another perspective. And what we were talking about earlier, Ben, which is what are the other possibilities? Asking questions. What is a different perspective, different than this? What else is possible? Right. And it sounds like maybe some younger people on average are a little bit more used to or a little bit more open to asking those questions.
Well, and one lady shared with me that she started this book club, with using my book as the sort of walking them through these concepts. And she said one of her sons, is a teenage boy, he said, I don't understand what's the relevance. I don't understand why I'm doing this. What are we doing here? And she said, well, let me ask you, what career would you like to have? Well, you've been thinking about, you got, going to go to college, you're going to major in something, and and he said, well, I don't know yet. She said, what if I told you, according to Mr. Lytle here, that jobs are going to come and go much faster, and entire careers will disappear because of artificial intelligence? How are you going to decide what you do? And she said, He was standing up, almost looking like he was walking out of the room when she
Oh,
made that statement. He came back and sat down, and she said, "We had a wonderful discussion." so,
that's
so
fantastic.
yeah. So that's the idea. That's the idea. So again, it's not a disaster movie, but it is something we have to adapt to, and we certainly have to think about jobs, careers, differently than we ever have. Financing, having our own reserve, so that if our job's eliminated, we could go 6 months till we find a new one. That kind of thing. That's the pragmatics, and that's, by the way, that's Boris. That's how the book is designed, and it's what it
Yes.
made it so hard to write, so difficult. Was there are a lot of great books out there on the future, but they're long and most people don't read them. They're complex and they're more academic. And I wanted to get something down in plain language within less than a third of the book. And that talks about where we're headed. And then then it shifts gears. The book should literally shifts gears to being very prescriptive. Here's 7 things you really need to pay attention to. And if you pay attention to these 7 things and you do them well, you'll come out a lot better as we go through this transition. And so that's the way the book's laid out. And that's pretty much what parents have to do. They have to explain what's going on, and then really say, okay, now what are we going to do about it? So immediately, you're 14 years old. If it's possible, and maybe he's got, he gets Christmas money. We're going to take 10% of that, and we're going to open up a mutual fund account for you. And here's why.
And this is on the business side and the finance side. How do you think,
Right.
and we've talked about longevity, how do you think about on the health side and healthcare side, and how people are thinking
right.
at
Well,
different ages about their health?
Yeah, there's a whole chapter there on optimal health. And I've, my background, of course, is not only getting very deep into the healthcare system, but my son, one of my sons and I, Hugh, he and I built a very successful prevention and wellness company in 2004. And so so it's something, and I've lived that way. I mean, I pay every day. I work out on average, about 280 days a year, hour and a half. And you can do it. I mean, people can do it. And so there's a whole chapter on here's how you manage to optimum health. Here's how do you really optimize your health. And if you do that, and for the advice I give is don't do it because you think you're going to live longer, because that's not in your control. That'll likely be a great side benefit, but do it because it makes you feel better today. And it will. It's one of those things once you get in the habit of it, you can't do without it. Because
it becomes part of your life, part of your
mindset. It reduces those endorphins.
Right.
Chemically, you're healthier. Your outlook is better. And you can, as I explained in the book, you can have a bad day. I mean, just otherwise, it's kind of, it's a terrible day, But if you get a good workout in, you're happy. That's
100%,
it.
100%, yep. and more motivated and more positive.
Absolutely.
Considering all those other things we're talking about, just much more
right.
with a bright outset and outlook. With that in mind, we're getting a number of questions from folks like Arthur Merkin, Jan Jurneka, and we also have a question from Marshall Tinkle and several more who are asking about the aspects of our society that are less connected, it seems, to people's day-to-day activities, to the birth rates, although I think there's still a connection, of course, and we can talk about that as well. They're asking about the climate change and what is happening with the environment, and to what degree we've already, as a society, have impacted the environment and our planet, and to what degree that is a big challenge, and how is that challenge to be tackled in the world of democratization, in the world of decreasing birth rates, etc. And to what degree you think about that as a big challenge to be tackled?
Well, it is, but I want to preface it with something, and it will probably, a lot of the people watching will not agree with me at all, but I would ask you to study the arc of history as I have, and study how societies groupthink. There has been, I believe, the fourth person born on the planet turned to the others and said, "It's all over tomorrow. We're done." There is a cataclysmic intoxication that people have, and there has always been a great end coming. A lot of people don't realize this, but in Europe in the year 1000, there were mass suicides all across the country because it was the year 1000 and we were only supposed to live to 1000. And of course, it was nonsense. We tend to take these things and we forget innovation. When something gets bad, we find solutions, and the more time we have to fix it, the better. So there is a lot going favorable in terms of the environment, as well as what is apparent that we have to do a better job of taking care of our planet. I mean, it started. I'm old enough to remember smokestack economies. I mean, the parts of the United States were filthy. The rivers were filthy.
Right.
It was horrible. We've made enormous progress, and we're making more progress. Now, there are the people who have a cataclysmic mindset. They're intoxicated with it. They go, "Well, we have 10 years left." Oh, baloney. They don't know. The answer is they do not know. And one group of scientists say this and one group of scientists say that. My place that I start is very different. And this is a great conversation starter with people over dinner. And you ask, do you believe that the human race is intended or is evolving, purposely being evolved for extinction or for abundance? It starts right there. And I say it's for abundance. And I look at the arc of history and I say, wow, and I'll point to that. I do not think the environment is the number one risk we have. I think it is and has been a crazy person with nuclear weapons.
Interesting.
Because that could happen so fast. And there are crazy people, obviously, who have nuclear weapons. And once it sets off, we truly don't know. We don't know at that point what will happen. That's a heck of a lot more of a real risk. It remains the biggest risk to the world. And it's one we absolutely cannot control. We simply cannot control.
Cannot prepare for it, cannot adjust.
No, there's nothing you can do. Compare that to the environment where we are making the shifts we're making in energy, the way where people are much more attentive to it to now. And this is where declining population works for us. That we as there are fewer people living on subsistence living, you don't have to have coal-fired furnaces to provide basic electricity and those kind of things. So we will see improvements, I think, continuing to the environment. I'm confident that because again, I start from the place that says, wait a minute, this is the cataclysm of our time. But there's always been a cataclysm, and there always will be. There always will be. So that's where I start, and that's probably, if you're a devout, if you're really convinced that the planet's going to go up in smoke, probably nothing I'll say will change your mind. But I would ask you, I think the more thoughtful, truly thoughtful response is, we'll figure this out. We'll innovate our way out of it. The one with nuclear weapons, that's much tougher. That's a much tougher one. We've been living with this, since 1946, and fortunately, mutually assured destruction so far has prevented someone from pushing the button. But there's fewer countries that are crazy, but we still have crazy ones, and we all know who they are.
And I guess in a situation of the democratization that you're talking about, some of the systems breaking down, that's where there's a greater risk for, like you said, mutually assured destruction, unfortunately not working and not being a deterrent enough. And then some uncontrolled actors launching some form of a very disastrous attack, and
Right. And it wouldn't, and even if it doesn't, destroy one part of the world, it would obviously be cataclysmic in the number of people that would die. And then it could spread it could destroy the environment in a way we can't even imagine. So that is our number one, I think, has been, again, the best argument there is, well, okay, we're 70 plus years and nobody's done it. That only gives me a certain level of comfort, and hopefully we'll figure that out. And again, I remain optimistic because I believe we are being evolved for abundance, and we just don't see it and don't appreciate it. Don't appreciate how far we've come. And there's a lot fewer of those really bad actors in the world than there were 20 or 30 years ago. A lot fewer. And so
right. There's a lot more emphasis on the ones that are there in terms of how our awareness and how news and media work. But actually, what you're saying is factually based on data. There's actually less opportunity for those actors to act out because there's just fewer of them.
Right. And so that's the good news. But again, start from the fact that it's a waste of time to run around fearful. It really is. It's sad. It's a loss of human creativity, because you can't be creative when you're afraid. You can't make good decisions when you're afraid. So,
and this is actually scientifically and medically proven.
Absolutely. So simply go, okay, this is life. And I remember once I was fretting about something when I was in my early 30s, and I was, an executive in IT, and I had 2 teenage boys I was raising on my own, and going to law school at night. And so I was fretting about it. Not, really, I've never been a very fearful person. And again, I thank my parents for that kind of grounding. But he said, he's very wise. And he said to me, Ben, you seem like a very strong man to me. And I said, well, okay. And he said, don't you think you can handle whatever life serves up? And nobody had ever asked me that. And I went, yeah, I think I can. Once you have that attitude, I'll deal with it. Fear will never grip you again.
No stopping you, and somebody asking the question. In your case, it was somebody else asking the question. In one's case, it could be through this discussion or other learnings, people learning to ask themselves that question, right? And giving an affirmative, positive answer.
Exactly. And we don't have time for it today, but there's this cataclysmic intoxication comes a lot from one of the 5 primal fears. That's one theory, which is existence. And what it means is that down really, really deep, the idea that we never existed is even a greater fear than death. And so somehow in these cataclysms, we will just be a boom, and in the universe, it just keeps on going, and it wasn't even a notable event. Well, that's not really quite true. And so, and because there's a completely opposite point of view, that every one of us has the opportunity every day, in every moment, to make existence better.
100%. I believe so as well, and hopefully our audience either already did, and hopefully as a result of our discussion will, and we'll pass on this thinking and knowledge. Ben, what other trends are you seeing that you would consider important and vital for people to understand and think about for what's to come?
Well, I think first of all, understand, and that's, again, it's in the first 88 pages of the book, but understand that we are in an industrial revolution, the 4th one, and those are defined by the fact that there's a series of forces converge, and that creates very rapid change over a period. And they're all fueled by by some kind of technological innovation that accelerates it. So that's what causes them to converge. So if you look at the first industrial revolution, it was steam and the ability to suddenly, for the first time, kind of mass produce things. The idea of mass production that began in 1760, in France and England. Today, it's the convergence of forces like democratizing, like technology, and back then it was steam. In this industrial revolution, it's these rapid advances in information technology, particularly artificial intelligence, the cloud, broadband. All of these things are coming together. And so, a fun thing your people on the here can do is just go out and take any industry and do a Google search and say, what are the top 10 innovations coming? You'll be amazed how all these industries are radically innovating, and behind it all is these same information technologies of cloud, AI, and increasingly intelligent automation that can assume work we don't want to do. And so I think that's one important thing to think of, and understanding what those drivers are. That it's democratization, democratizing innovations. It's a population decline. It's shrinking of distance. Think about how powerful that is. Since the beginning of time, human beings, where they lived really mattered. I mean, that's how you were secure. That's where you worked. And suddenly,
where you develop families.
Right. Now you're going to work. You can work from anywhere. And you very soon, increasingly, you'll be able to travel and feel like you've seen somewhere, even if it's no longer possible for you to actually do it, or it would never be possible for you to do it. And so you'll be able to experience things as if you were there. And then on top of that, physical travel is going to get cheaper, faster, safer. And so the whole idea of distance is suddenly not what it used to be. And that's going to change the world again. So that's one of those forces that's radically changing the world. So I understand those forces, understand how they converge, understand that things are accelerating. And so we have to learn to adapt to this faster pace of living. And not let it make us fearful. And because when people get fearful, they try to find certainty, and this is where really nutty ideas come up. When fear causes you to need your ego to need certainty, security, and it's a fiction. There is no such thing as certainty in nature. So we have to learn, okay, that's a fiction. It's learning how to respond to what comes, which makes you an adaptive human being, and your confidence in being able to deal with it.
And not to double down on bad choices, but actually be flexible, dynamic, and move away to something that might be a better solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. In terms of some of the trends that we've already talked about, you've talked about the cloud, you've talked about the distances. How does that impact how we're interfacing with governments, how governments are interfacing with us as populations, as constituents, citizens, and how they're interfacing as governments, but also how they're interfacing as those facilitating financial systems, Ben? Because Alina C is asking a question about the future of monetary systems, and I think we can talk about it a little bit more broadly and high level, and then zero in if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I think, and it's a fascinating subject, and some people find it shocking when I say this, and I raised it in the book. We could be seeing, not to say the beginning of the end, but we're going to see a radically different nation state in the future, because the cloud will become where what is going to be more reliable, more secure than what our government does for us. People are more mobile than ever. And so if they don't particularly like it, after a while, they can just pick up and move in a way we've never been able to do before. and the having monetary systems that are in the cloud and not tied to a nation state could become very quickly advantageous. Now, we've had all kind of problems because we're new into the digital currencies and all that, and but in time we're very likely going to figure that out. And so if people are mobile, if the monetary system maybe at least what doesn't replace, but it's backed up more, and it gives you an alternative in the cloud, then you're going to start at some point nation states, and this would be a wonderful outcome. What if they had to compete for our residency based on the quality of life they could provide, low taxation, because if we don't, we pick up and leave. And if I've got a passport through the cloud that's maybe accepted by 95% of the countries, why am I going to live here if you can't offer me a better lifestyle? Now think about what happens if suddenly
what
nations
efficiency, what productivity in the apparatus of the government would have to result.
Yeah. Right. And so I don't think, and as wild as that sounds, in the 1770s, and then in the 19th or in the 19th and early 20th century, people were still debating how in the world could you have a nation without a king, until the United States and France and other people figured out, you know what, we don't really need a king. Well, what if we had a different kind of nation state that actually worked for us instead of us working for it? Now,
wouldn't a service provider, right?
Right. And we all complain about, you're a business person. Most important thing in business, most important thing in life and in your relationships is, do you have aligned incentives? Well, the incentives with government elected officials and us is not aligned. Their major motivation is to get elected and to stay in office. It is not performance-based because we don't have good performance measures. Well, if the free market decided, because people will pick up and leave. And so if you look today and you say, well, it still sounds really fantastical. Look what's happened in the United States. Major migrations from some states with high taxes and who really came down heavy-handed during COVID, to states that do not. Now, if that can occur within the United States, it could occur worldwide. And I think that could be a very interesting development. So to go back to the lady who asked the questions, monetary systems are one of the most important things that hold a nation state in place. Yes. Not going to change overnight, but I can see a major shift coming. And this distance, when some people ask me, well, okay, I get why you say the population decline is and longer life expectancy is such a big deal. I don't understand distance. This is one of them right here. Not only does it open up lifestyles we've never had, but it makes people able to make decisions that could cause government to be much more responsive. And the monetary system could really be broken very quickly if people decide, I don't like living here anymore, or I don't like putting my money here anymore. It's happened in the past. So anyway, it's a fascinating thing to think about.
Fascinating thing to think about, a very interesting and intriguing future, a future of many opportunities, a future of much to consider and pivot our mindsets, our perceptions, pivot some of our habits towards being even that much more impactful, that much more successful. And then time just flies extremely fast when speaking with you, because there's always lots to think about, lots of many interesting topics. You cover a lot in the Potentialist. There's a lot more that we didn't cover that's there in terms of helping people better understand how you're seeing the changes in the society, what people might be able to practically do to pivot themselves towards being extremely successful. What are the top several practical steps we could leave with the audience as we say goodbye to them shortly, about what you think our audience members should do daily to be that much more prepared for the next new reality of the next 30 years?
Well, and I would actually leave it with a request, and it's a pass fail for me. If those of you who've been on here today leave this and you walk out and go, that was interesting, but you do nothing, I failed. I just flat failed. I hope you will walk out of here and go, I'm going to talk to my family about this. I'm going to talk to the people in my company about this. If I'm a leader, I have a responsibility to help them adapt and to get our company ready to adapt. Leaders need to be as articulate and as knowledgeable about democratization and deinstitutionalization and its effects on companies, and that's how you get disrupted. If you don't believe it, ask Sears, ask Blockbuster. So this is very real stuff. Take it, go out and say, this is going to be a major part of my leadership going forward with my family, my community, my friends, and my company and my career. If you do that, then everything I've been working for, everything I spent 6 years in this process to do, succeeded. And I know some people have, and that's what keeps me going.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much for this insightful conversation, for these words of wisdom and encouragement. I'm certain that many of the people on the call, and hopefully all, we're aspire to excellence, are able to follow the advice. And thank you very much, Ben, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for your active participation and questions. Everybody, Ben, thank you. And everybody have a great rest of the day. Speak soon.
See you soon. Bye, Boris.
Bye-bye. Bye, Ben.